from Disney. I never thought about who you need to make up greeting cards, but you need artists. You need creative people. So they were paying all these people a lot of money, and these people, because they were located in Brooklyn, were paying income tax to Brooklyn, but that wasn't enough. They had to add a new tax on companies. But it was only companies over a certain number of employees. And there was one company in Brooklyn that fulfilled that definition. That company had been there since World War II, providing jobs, paying taxes, the whole 9 yards. They're building in Westlake now. But the plan was to go to Illinois. I'm not quite sure who told them about taxes in Illinois, but they were misinformed. But as a practical matter, there we were faced with a company with 2,000 people leaving Cuyahoga County, which, as you know what the situation is there. So we were able to turn that around. I was there 4 days afterward. I missed the governor by 2 days. I knew some of the people that lived in this county who worked up there. Their jobs were leaving. It was pathetic, the day that the governor and I went up and announced what we were doing to help them get over to Westlake instead of going to Illinois. The day we were up there, some of the ladies that had been there for a very long time had tears running down their face, and they came up and grabbed the governor and they said, "Thank you so much. We're going to get to live where our grandchildren live." That's a heck of a note, to have people who have worked hard all their lives in this state, pay taxes, and get run out of the state because they have to follow their job. Right now is not a good time to get jobs. And here was a company being run out of the state. We went over to Diebold, that's a big company, technological company, and they were getting ready to leave. I had lunch one day, Bob Evans was another friend. I seem to have friends in the restaurant business. I was over there having lunch with Steve Davis, who's president of Bob Evans, and it was really strange. I mean, totally coincidental. I said, "How's business?" Which you should ask a business guy that. And he looked at me and he said, "Well, you know, we have a lot of land in Dallas." I said, I'm thinking to myself, "Is he going to build a golf course? What's he talking about?" I said to him, "What does that mean?" He said, "Well, we're looking at moving our national headquarters out of Ohio, out of the city of Columbus, and out to Dallas, Texas. A lot of incentives out there. They don't have an income tax, you know. They've created in 1 year 40% of all the new jobs in the state of Ohio, in the state of Texas. Texas is something amazing, and I think right now in the city of Charleston, the governor of Texas is announcing for president. And I've been in touch with him over a period of time. He seems to be pretty conservative. Can't imagine how a guy like that get elected governor in Texas. At the end of the day, I ran to the car, literally, and I called the guy who's in charge of helping keep business in Ohio, Kwame. It's an amazing name. And I said, "We got a problem." Oh, before that, I told Steve, I said, "Listen, if you move to Dallas, Texas, Bob Evans is going to come back up out of that cornfield out there in his home county and haunt you all." But they moved 10 miles instead of moving to Dallas for their corporate headquarters. They had all kinds of incentives out there, but they stayed here in Ohio, thank goodness. A lot of people in the headquarters of Bob Evans Industries. So those are some of the things that we did, that we were able to do quickly. Now we are restructuring the entire Department of Development. We had a couple of companies that left the state, and we talked to them about why, and they said they tried to work out something with the last administration, but they weren't very responsive. Well, of course, they weren't tax consumers, they were taxpayers, so they weren't too worried about them. They're worried about the consumers of tax money. And NCR had been in this state for 125 years. It was a world-class technological company. This just breaks my heart, because there were so many people who were put out of work as a result of this, and they're now in Georgia. What in the world would happen to cause something like that? Why would that happen? Well, an ineffective Department of Development, a state that hadn't thought about how you invited and held people, and a governor who didn't know first base about keeping and attracting business and industry. There are people unemployed across this state today who have no one to blame. They didn't cause the problem. The company didn't cause the problem. The government caused the problem. The government was the enemy of people who were working. And that's the saddest commentary you can make. Well, it's changed. A lot of people, of course, are madder than heck at the governor and myself, and I'm very pleased. Most of them are people that I welcome their dislike. They're people who don't get it. They're people who don't understand that our young people are leaving this state at a heck of a clip, one of the highest in the country. We educate a lot of kids for other states to put to work. That's a very, very sad commentary. We have some of the best colleges and universities in the world. And those kids that are products of that. I have a son and daughter and a daughter-in-law living in Philadelphia, for crying out loud. This is not a good thing for any of us, and we have to keep focused on it. We want to make sure that we don't let the liberals say, well, these millionaires are moving their companies out of the state and they're doing it for some reason other than bad economics in Ohio. We've got to keep working at it, and if we do, we are going to be in a different position. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so pleased to tell you this morning that as a result of the work that this legislature and governor did together, we moved up in the ranks of states that are friendly to business. 11 states. We got a lot to do, but boy, have we done a lot. And I'm so proud of the people that I was able to recruit to run for the House of Representatives. I'm also very proud that the people of the Senate picked Larry Obhoff to represent us in our county in the Senate. He brings a tremendous amount of ability, and I hope that he's discussed with you his hard work on Obamacare, which would take away our medical liberty along with our economic liberty. This president is absolutely unbelievable. There's no excuse for what they did, shutting down the access of the people. It was an unbelievable thing. It was the sort of thing that you saw in Europe before World War II, where people took over countries. Nazis, fascists, you name it, took over the countries. And that's exactly what happened in Congress with Obamacare. There was no input, there was only dictation. Larry has tried those cases down in Florida. He advised one of the outstanding attorneys general down there. He has a heck of a background, and I'm just very, very proud that he's helping us down in Columbus, bringing his judgment and approach to bear on state issues where we need a lot of help. We have, in our recruiting, had just wonderful experiences. I just want to tell you about a couple of them. It's amazing. We last had a Republican conservative legislator in Scioto County in 1945. Unbelievable. And I went down there to recruit, and it was Vern Reich's district, and I was bound and determined to have a good candidate down there. And I went down to recruit, and I met with the county chairman, who was also the county coroner, and a good Republican, hardworking. So we talked a little bit about the 5 people whose names he had to give to me who might be interested in running. And I said to him, what do you do, doctor? And he said, well, I have a family practice here at the hospital. And then he said, of course, I teach medicine over in Athens at the medical school. And then he said, there was some military stuff there. I said, are you in the military? He said, well, yes. He said, I actually am a flight surgeon. I've had 3 tours of Iraq. And, you know, the flight surgeons go down on the field to rescue the boys. And, that was, you know, I'm getting emotional now. I was emotional then, you can imagine. And I said to him, have you ever thought of running for the legislature? And he looked me square in the eye, and he said, it's my duty. Ooh, you know, you don't get a lot of those. Most people are reluctant. I mean, it's a big job. It takes you away from home and so forth. And And he incidentally was a lieutenant colonel. He advanced to colonel in the meantime, full bird colonel in the National Guard. He was in charge of all of our medical operations in the National Guard and the Army side. Remarkable man. And here he is running in a district that last had a Republican member in 1945, and he gets 61% of the vote. He blew him up because of people like you. He didn't blow him up because of any other reason. But he had the people, he had 300 people with shirts that said Democrats for Johnson, going door to door in the Democrat parts of the district. I'll never forget, I was down there one day and I'm looking around, and you know, that's a big group of volunteers, for crying out loud, but that was just the Democrats. He reached out, people understood where he was coming from, they understood he wasn't going to vote for taxes, they understood that he was going to vote and introduce legislation that would make it impossible for the number of pill mills that were being operated in this state to continue. They'd had 36 deaths in his county alone. 36 deaths from the pill mills down there. These are mills that sell drugs that are ethical drugs. They're pharmaceutical drugs. There's not something somebody made in the back room, but illegally sell them, and people let them use them. That bill passed, and it just says something about our governor. He'd been down there 3 or 4 times, and he had seen what was going on. You know, people with that look on their face like they're taking drugs. And he came on the floor of the House and sat there to watch the debate. I've been there a long time, since 1967, and I have never seen a governor come down to watch a debate. But he felt that strongly about what was going on. That legislation is now being used in other states as a model to protect people from that kind of abuse of ethical drugs. We had a lady over in Summit County in a district that isn't very good. That is, say, it's not what you would call a Republican district. And this was another funny comment. She's got 3 children at home. And she also has a degree in electrical engineering from the University of Pennsylvania and an MBA from Wharton. And she worked for McKinsey. I mean, people like that are very unusual, period, let alone in politics. And I went over what she had to do, particularly the door-to-door. And she said that she was really willing to do it. And after a while, she said, I really want to do it. And after a while, she said, we got to do it. And she carried that district, which it had, she defeated the incumbent Democrat, who was one of the spenders. And there she is. And you just can't imagine getting that kind of candidates across the state, but we did. And we did in part because I think people understood what you understand, and what you understood first. Organizations like this are leading America. If you think that the Tea Parties are being attacked because they're ineffective, then you need counseling. You are the equivalent of my ancestors who fought in the American Revolution. Excuse me. The people have insights into the necessity of doing certain things to preserve and protect liberty. Those are the people who made America in the first place, who protected it and saved it on the battlefield, and in how they lived and served government. I think it's a very, very important time. And it may be our last shot at it, because more and more of these young people get dragged into this Obama thing. 25% of them are unemployed, of course. That shows they're lacking some kind of judgment or perhaps even education when that happens. We have a issue on the ballot, issue 2, this year, and I'm just going to say a few things about it because I think it's important that people understand what's going on there. We have a problem in Ohio with what has happened in public employment. When I first went to Columbus and worked for John Brown, I was a student in the law school, our employment at the state and county and municipal level in the halls of education, those people worked there in part because They had good pensions, they had good benefits, they had the kinds of things that people who are conservative look for. Today, a lot of them are there for reasons that are kind of shocking. For example, there are teachers across this state who do not pay anything toward their pension. I love to ask an audience, how many of you here don't pay anything toward your pension? No, of course not. The average citizen doesn't have the opportunity to have their whole pension 100% paid for. How many people don't pay toward their medical care? Nothing. There's one. Are you in the military?
I'm in the union.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you. Thank you. Just think of that. I mean, most people, you know, have to put up money. We have a situation in which the public pension portion of this thing is underfunded. So you're not only paying for your own pension, 100% or whatever, or your 401k or whatever. You're not only paying for that, but the guy down the street who teaches school, he needs you to pay for his too. Thank you very much. Pass the hat. It just burns me up to no end. I mean, the idea that people are treated that differently is wrong. I think it's something that the average person I knew as teachers, and I see a couple of them here today that are dear friends of mine, would not be happy with. They participated in supporting the pensions. And Ohio has good pensions. And we are not underfunded the way a lot of states are. Police and fire is underfunded. But that's because in some cities, 40% of the police who retire do so on disability. Wow. How'd they get in the police department in the first place? Makes you wonder. In the State Highway Patrol, which is a quasi-military outfit, you know, thank you very much, ma'am, that kind of thing. We have 13 retirees on disability in the whole outfit. And those are guys that hit bridges in the ice and that sort of thing. These are people that are really disabled. We have people working still in the Highway Patrol at other jobs within the patrol command, radio and so forth, who were once full troopers. But they're not disabled enough to get a disability in the Highway Patrol as opposed to police and fire. This is a mess. We took polls, of course, everybody always takes polls. You know what you think, but you want to confirm it. Seniority. We had a wonderful teacher down in Dayton, Ohio. He'd been there 3 or 4 years. He was the teacher of the year for the whole state of Ohio. And they had to have layoffs. And he was, of course, one of the first to go because he was one of the seniority. We don't retain people based upon their ability and work and help to children. It's how long they've been there and kept breathing. That's it. That's an outrage, and there's no excuse for it. 77% of the people in Ohio agree with that. They agree that that's an outrage. State and local government employees receive health care benefits, and they will continue to do so, but we want to require them to pay 15% of the premium for their health care benefits. And we ask how many people who have health care either pay for 100% of it or some significant part of it, more than 15% usually. But the people who are fighting against this don't think they ought to have to do that. They think that you ought to pay for that. They are going to have to pay a higher percentage of their costs for pensions, probably in the range of 2%. We don't have the final actuarial studies. Unbelievable. And then finally, it eliminates automatic pay increases. And it goes to a system that where you get more pay based on your work. It's called merit. That's for teachers, that's for policemen, deputy sheriffs. Everybody is measured on their merit. Now we have people who say immediately, well, I don't want the superintendent of my school deciding what I ought to get paid. Well, it's fair enough. because you can still collectively bargain in a range of merit pay structure. They talk about they've taken away collective bargaining. Forget it. That's not true. That's a lie. I have teachers come up to me and show me a letter from the OEA, that great authority on education, and it says, your pay is going to be cut to $32,000 a year in the event that this legislation stays in force. What a lie. No such thing ever was considered even. And yet, they're going to be out there spending probably $30 million to lie to the people of Ohio about what's in this bill.
Mr. Speaker, how did we get this moved up?
Well, I'm out raising money, and in fact, I was in Cincinnati yesterday working at it. We have to have $20 million to be able to get the point across. And I think we'll have that money. There are people outside Ohio, because of the change here, how we moved from left to right, that change has impressed people all over the country. We have people in the South who are very interested in this. And after the vote in Wisconsin, we have a lot more people who get it, who are interested. So if we have $20 million, I think the people of Ohio are smart to understand what it's about. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just begin and give you a plug? In answer to your question, from the Republican Party are these handouts, truth or spin, and it's each one of us, if we can get away from our politics, we must. This is a way to save this state and be a model for the rest of the country. But these at the fair. Each one teach one. Take them to dinner. Take them to neighbors that you meet. They're building a better Ohio. You can download them. Get on Building a Better Ohio. There's Truth or Spin on SB 5. Our first real change to fix Ohio. How to fix education. Things are happening that we've demanded years ago. So we have these at the fair. But if we each download them and talk and be ambassadors for real change and get the word out for how totally reasonable SB 5 is, maybe we can make a difference.
You definitely can make the difference. You have made the difference. Issue 3 isn't on the ballot because something fell down out of the sky. You folks did the job. You did the work. And it can be done again. And it has to be done again. This is unfair to taxpayers. This is unfair to senior citizens and others. There's no reason that we ought to live in a state that does what is now being done through collective bargaining. There's no reason that people ought to have the right to collectively bargain, not to participate in their hospitalization, not to participate in their pensions and so forth. Clear in the back.
There's a small point, well, it's not so small. There's a point that you made that is so easily glossed over, but it is so key to what this battle really is. And you said that they had to state that pay would be dropped to $32,000. Okay. Now, I think that's a blatant lie. Would you agree?
It is a total lie.
Okay. Doesn't that tell you something about the character of the people that we're fighting?
Amen.
This is a spiritual battle. This is not just a political battle. There is something much deeper, an undercurrent that's going on here that we're fighting. And if we don't fight that battle with the tools that we're given, we won't win.
Amen. And I appreciate that. And that's... We shouldn't want teachers in the classroom who support that kind of thing, bottom line. You know, we have wonderful teachers across this state, and I get into the schools. I've been in the Cleveland public schools, not so much, but I've been in the voucher schools up there, which are subsidized by private citizens, so that I mean, think how many kids up there in Cleveland never saw their family go to work. Honestly, I mean, there are people, and those kids need help. And unfortunately, the public schools up there don't give them the kind of help that they need. It's what you're talking about. It's spiritual help. It's help for them in their characters and so forth. We have to be doing those things, and if we're not, if we have people in the classroom who believe that they ought to be allowed to lie to the rank and file teachers, that's bad news. We tried to bargain this thing out. Are there any reporters here? We tried to bargain this thing. Homer's a reporter now. That's a whole new role. We tried to bargain this thing out. And I work particularly closely with the police and fire because I have a special place in my heart for guys that do what they do. Except when they're doing things like bargaining away their responsibilities for pensions and medical. And we were moving along very well with them. We had Joanne Davidson, former Speaker of the House. She was bargaining with the unions that represent state and local employees who do plow the snow and do all the other things that they do. And then, because they had an agreement among all the different unions, they brought in the OEA. And they said that the people who were bargaining should go to hell. And as a result of that, no more discussions about how can we change the bill so that it's acceptable to them and not give up the purpose of it. Now they're, of course, indicating that in both houses they never offered one amendment, the Democrats. They weren't trying to work something out. They were trying to kill something. It just, the whole thing is very, very disappointing because in the